Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Jadi di sini kita kan membahas tentang buku ya, buku yang lumayan bagus ya, sangat bagus ya. Tentang Textbook of Cardiothoracic Surgery ya, dari John Hopkins Medicine. Mungkin sebelumnya aku udah baca sendiri sih dari bab 1 ya. Lanjut ke bab 3 ya, Pulmonary Physiology, Function Test, and Bronchoscopic Technique. Oke. eh, ya. Pulmonary Physiology, Function Test, and Bronchoscopic Technique. Kita baca dulu key konsepnya. Di epidemiologi, pulmonary complications occur in 5 to 10% of all surgical patients and have been shown to prolong hospital stay by 1 to 2 weeks. Approximately 35% of deaths within the first week after surgery are due to pulmonary complications. Pathophysiology, pneumonia occurs in 10 to 40% of patients after major surgery and is associated with mortality rate of 30 to 45%. General anesthesia can decrease lung volume by 30 to 40%, and this decrease may persist to 1 to 2 weeks post-operative. The clinical feature, cardiothoracic surgery is associated with the highest frequency of pulmonary complication. Risk factors include type of surgery, general anesthesia, length of surgery, and general anesthesia. Smoking, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease (COPD), age, obesity, functional status, and history of dyspnea. Diagnostiknya, preoperative evaluation should include a direct history and physical examination to identify those patients at particular risk pulmonary and complication. Pulmonary function tests with spirometry and arterial blood gas should be obtained for any patient undergoing lung resection. For further risk stratification, the pulmonary exercise testing or CPAT is indicated in high-risk patients who do not have adequate predicted postoperative lung function. Alternatives to CPAT include the shuttle walk or stair climb test. Bronchoscopy is an essential tool in the preoperative for diagnosis, staging, and surgical planning. Treatment: inhaled bronchodilator may successfully reverse some cases of obstructive pulmonary disease. Outcome-nya, perioperative pulmonary function evaluation can stratify patient for risk, thus identify who can safely undergo major cardiothoracic surgery and minimizing the risk of significant morbidity and mortality. Appropriate nodal staging is essential in the workup of lung cancer patient and essential for surgical planning. Lanjut ke introduction-nya. So pulmonary complication in the perioperative period remain significant cause of morbidity and mortality and occur in 5 to 10% of all surgical patients. Not only have those complications been shown to prolong hospital stay by an average of 1 to 2 weeks, but 25% of deaths within the first week after surgery are reportedly due to pulmonary complication. One way to minimize this complication is with the appropriate use of preoperative testing. Both non-invasive preoperative testing such as pulmonary function test and minimally invasive testing such as bronchoscopy can add valuable information to the workup of the preoperative cardiothoracic patient. In this chapter, we will review the burden of post-operative complication, basic pulmonary physiology, and preoperative pulmonary workup for cardiothoracic surgical patient, and the role of bronchoscopy for diagnosis and staging of lung cancer. Jadi ya, ini ada 3 ini sih. Review kan. Jadi burden of post-operative complication, basic pulmonary physiology, dan preoperative pulmonary workup seperti bronchoscopy ya, terutama untuk diagnosis sama staging dari lung cancer. Pertama, perioperative pulmonary complication. In the postoperative period, there are There are a wide range of pulmonary complications in Table 3.1 that can occur in a patient with underlying lung disease. Postoperative pneumonia can occur in 10 to 40% of patients and is associated with mortality rate of 30 to 45% after major surgical procedure. The benefits of true preoperative evaluation include identification of patients with underlying lung disease, modification of risk factor, optimization of medical management, and avoidance of elective surgical in high-risk patients, and prevention of inappropriate surgical resection by appropriately staging for lung cancer. There are multiple risk factors for postoperative pulmonary complications, including patient-related factors as well as the specific type of surgery and anesthesia. The location and type of surgery being performed are the major determinant of pulmonary complication risk. Cardiothoracic surgery has been repeatedly shown to have the highest frequency of pulmonary complications. Anesthesia is also important in determining postoperative risk, as it has been shown that general anesthesia can decrease lung volume by 10 to 30%, for which these changes may persist for 1 to 2 weeks post-operative. The combination of surgery and general anesthesia often leads to decreased lung volume, worsening gas exchange, and impairment in airway clearance, all of which may result in severe complications, especially in patients with underlying lung disease. Patient-specific risk factors that have been identified are listed in Table 3.2. Appropriate identification and modification of reversible risk factor is an important component of the pre-operative evaluation and one that can significantly reduce operative risk. One of the most important modifiable risk factors is smoking cessation several weeks prior to elective surgery. Cessation 2 weeks prior may in fact increase post-operative complication. Jadi ya, 2 minggu sebelum operasi ya harus di-stop dulu pasien-pasien dengan proaktif ya. Likely as a result of the impaired mobilization of secretion. Ini ya, table 3.1 postoperative pulmonary complication ada berapa ya? Prolonged for mechanical ventilation, respiratory failure, pneumonia, bronchospasma, acute respiratory distress syndrome, atelectasis, pleural effusion, dan pneumothorax. Dan tadi risk faktornya di table 3 itu patient specific risk factor for pulmonary complication. Ada tobacco history, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, restrictive lung disease, age, obesity, functional status, dyspnea, sama impaired sensorium. Indication for pre-operative pulmonary function testing. Identifying patients who are at increased risk of pulmonary complication begin with detailed history and physical examination. Any unexplained dyspnea at rest or minimal exertion should warrant a more thorough evaluation prior to any elective surgical procedure. Smoking cessation should be recommended to all patients, ideally having them quit at least 2 weeks before the surgery. If a patient has any history of pure lung disease, significant tobacco use, or dyspnea with mild exertion, they warrant a pulmonary function test before any high-risk elective surgical procedure. The American College of Physicians recommends pre-operative pulmonary function testing for the following patients. 1. A patient with history of tobacco or dyspnea who are undergoing cardiothoracic or upper abdominal surgery. 2. Any patient with unexplained dyspnea or pulmonary symptom who is undergoing head, neck, orthopedic, or lower abdominal surgery. And 3. All patients undergoing lung resection. Pre-operative pulmonary function tests most often consist of spirometry, diffusion capacity, and sometimes arterial blood gas analysis. Patients undergoing lung resection surgery are clearly at particularly high risk of pulmonary complication and warrant a more thorough evaluation. Lanjut, pre-operative evaluation of the lung resection candidate. There are several risk factors that have been identified increased complication in patients undergoing lung resection. Lung resection surgery is associated with significant morbidity up to 50%, of patients and death in up to 8%. Oh, that's memang tinggi juga 50%. The type of, the type of resection is a major determinant of operative risk, with pneumonectomy having a greater operative morbidity and mortality than lobectomy. Okay. But pulmonary function testing with spirometry and ABG measurement should be obtained on all patients considered for lung resection surgery. Baseline hypercapnia and hypoxia at rest or during exertion predict an increased cervical morbidity. Spirometry is the most accurate and predictive pulmonary function test available. It can identify low-risk patients who can proceed directly to surgery as well as high-risk patients who warrant further investigation. It is recommended that patients have a postoperative forced expiratory volume in 1 FEV1 greater than 0.8 liter or 30% of predicted, and also post-operative diffusion capacity of carbon monoxide (DLCO) of greater than 40% of predicted. If pre-operative FEV1 is greater than 2.0 liter for pneumotomy and greater than 1.5% for lobectomy, no further pulmonary testing is required. Jadi cut off-nya 2 liter pada pneumotomy, ada 1,5 liter pada lobectomy ya. Ya kalau misalnya udah untuk itu ya nggak perlu dilakukan pemeriksaan ulang. And the patient can proceed directly to lung resection. All patients who have FEV1 below this cut off require more extensive evaluation prior to lung resection. Pada figure 3.1 ya. These additional tests are used to help predict postoperative pulmonary function. The quantitative perfusion scan is used to estimate the percent of functional lung that is being resected. The estimate of postoperative pulmonary function is calculated with the following equation. So predicted FEV1 itu equal preoperative FEV1 dikalikan dengan 100 100 minus percent of lung to be removed per 100. Nah, the same equation can be used to calculate the predicted post-operative DLCO. Any patient with predicted post-operative FEV1 and DLCO above the minimum values outlined above should have standard risk of pulmonary complication. A patient who doesn't have adequate predicted postoperative lung function based on above testing should be denied surgery. So ya, kalau misalnya nggak sesuai, nggak adequate ya, denied surgery. Without further evaluation if he or she otherwise appears to be an appropriate surgical candidate. The high-risk patient should undergo cardiopulmonary exercise testing (CPAT) for further risk stratification. The measurement of the maximal oxygen consumption (VO2 max) by CPAT is most specific predictor of postoperative pulmonary complication following lung resection surgery. If the measured VO2 max is greater than 20 ml per kg per minute, the risk of postoperative pulmonary complication is low, and the patient may be safely offered to surgical resection. Patient with VO2 max below 15 milliliter per kg per minute have a moderate increased risk of surgery, and VO2 max less than 10 milliliter per kg per minute is associated with high surgical risk. Jadi ya 20, 50, and 10. And if VO2 less than 10 ml per kg per minute is higher cervical risk. Since lung resection is the only cure for many patients with localized lung cancer, the strategies for pulmonary function testing have been designed to maximize their sensitivity in identifying all patients who can safely tolerate lung resection. These strategies must be tailored to the goal of the individual patient. Next, arterial blood gas analysis. ABG analysis is a readily available test that provides useful information to identify a high-risk cervical patient. The ABG measurement should be performed at rest and breathing ambient air. If possible, the partial pressure oxygen (PO2) reflects the adequacy of gas transfer from the alveoli to blood when measured at sea level. Hmm, the normal PO2 range from 85 to 100 millimeter HD. The PO2 as a measurement of oxygenation should be interpreted in terms of an oxygen dissociation curve. Figure T3-2. Since majority of oxygen in the blood is bound to hemoglobin, relative changes in PO2 can reflect a wide range of changes in oxygen carrying capacity depending on the slope of the oxygen dissociation curve. Changes in the PO2 in the step part of the oxygen dissociation curve reflect large changes in blood oxygen content. In contrast, changes in the PO2 and the flat part of the oxygen dissociation curve PO2 is greater than 70 millimeter Hg due to only minor difference in oxygen content. The alveolar and arterial oxygen gradient. Alveolar arterial gradient oxygen is equal to PO2 minus PaCO2 per R minus PaO2. PaO2 tekanan O2 ya, is a more sensitive measurement of gas exchange problems. Since pulmonary function normally declines with age, the normal values of arterial of alveolar and arterial gradient depend on the age of patient and can be calculated based on the following equation. So normal alveolar arterial gradient is 2.5 plus 1 and a quarter of h plus 2. An elevated alveolar and arterial gradient can be due to ventilation perfusion mismatching, diffusion defect, or shock. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide (PCO2) is a measurement of CO2 production, pulmonary CO2, and alveolar ventilation. At least PCO2 is VCO2 per V. Therefore, an increase in CO2 production or decrease in alveolar ventilation leads to an increase in PCO2. Normally, PCO2 is tightly regulated with normal values range at rest between 38 and 42 millimeter Hg, millimeter Raksa, and is not affected by age. Hypercapnia can be due to wide range of causes. Alveolar ventilation is dependent on both minute ventilation and dead space ventilation in the relationship where VT is the tidal volume. Conditions such as emphysema or interstitial lung disease lead to increased VT, dead space ventilation, and corresponding decrease in VA, tadi alveolar ventilation, which can result in hypercapnia with exertion at rest. Hypoventilation can be due to a number of causes besides parenchymal lung disease, including musculoskeletal and neurologic causes. ABG analysis provides a simple measure of oxygenation and ventilation, and at the presence of hypoxia or hypercapnia should identify a higher risk patient who warrants more through evaluation. Dia gambar tadi ya. Gambar 31 ya. Algorithm of preoperative evaluation of candidates for lung resection. Di pertama dulu. Apakah lung cancer resectable? Jika iya, what is most extensive surgery likely to be needed for cure? Apakah lobectomy, lobus saja yang direseksi, atau wedge resection, atau pneumotomy? Jika lobectomy, post bronchodilator spirometry, apakah FIV-nya lebih dari 1,5 liter? Jika iya, ya operable. Jadi cut off dari lobectomy 1,5 liter FIV1. Jika no, dikalkulate dulu estimate post operative FIV1 dengan equation EPO FIV1. EPO tadi sama dengan EPO ya. Jadi estimate post operative FIV1 sama dengan pre operative FIV1 dikali 19 dikurang A, itu nomor dari obstructive segment dikurang B per 19 kurang A. Jadi berapa banyak lobus yang bakal direseksi. Dengan hitungan right upper lobe 3, middle lobe 2, right lower lobe 5, left upper lobe 3, lingua 2, left lower lobe. Jika pneumotomy, perform post bronchodilatory spirometry dengan target FEV1-nya 2 liter. Jika misalnya lebih dari 2 liter, is operable. Jika no, perform quantitative perfusion scan. Atau bisa juga dikalkulasikan estimate postoperative FEV1, EPO FEV1, sama dengan pre-FEV1 kali 1 kurang proportion of lung to be resected. Pneumotomy. Oke. Dan di bawah perform transfer factor SaO2 and air. Calculate estimate postoperative TLCO using the above formula. Okay. Allocate one of the following boxes. PPO FEV1 kurang 40% and TLCO dari 40% high risk ya. Jika lebih dari 40% atau saturasi oksigen 90% on air, average risk ya. Atau bisa juga menggunakan shuttle walk test. Jika kurang dari 51 of the saturation kurang 4%, refer to high risk box. Patient is at high risk of the planned procedure. Consider less extensive resection or radical radiotherapy. Jika lebih dari 25 shuttle and kurang dari 4% desaturasinya, dilakukan full cardiopulmonary exercise test CPAT. Jika peak if O2 kurang dari 15 ml per kg per menit, refer to high risk box. Jika lebih dari 15 ml per kg per menit, average risk. Ya, figure 3 itu tadi ya. Oksigen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Ini bisa kita lihat ada 3 yang gambar ini ya. Ada 3 garis, warna garis. Pertama, early stage of restrictive type. Yang B, late stage of restrictive type, and C, normal curve. Preoperative pulmonary function testing. Spirometry was first used by John Hutchinson in 1848 and is the most common test performed in pulmonary function laboratory. Spirometry measures the changes in the volume and flow during tidal breathing, maximal force, expiration, and inhalation. The graphic interpretation of the test, the flow volume loop depicts both inspiration and expiratory tracing. At least 3 tests are performed to ensure reproducible effort. Figure 3 shows the flow volume loops of a normal individual compared with the patterns seen in obstructive and restrictive lung disease. Spirometry provides several measurements that are important to understand, including the forced vital capacity, FVC, FEV1, and FEV1 per FVC ratio. The FVC is measure the volume exhaled during the entire forced expiratory effort. The FVC is decreased in both obstructive and restrictive lung disease. It can also be decreased as a result of chest wall deformities, pleural disease, or neuromuscular disease. The FEV1 measure of the volume gas exhaled in the first second of exhalation. In restrictive lung disease, FEV1 is decreased in a similar proportion of the FVC. Therefore, the FEV1 or FVC ratio is normal or even increased. In contrast, patients with obstructive lung disease have difficulty emptying the air within the lungs because of an increased resistance to expiratory flow and loss of plastic recoil, and the FEV1 is decreased to a greater degree of the FVC. The expiratory flow limitation seen in obstructive lung disease leads to a characteristic decrease in the FEV1 and FCV ratio and FVC ratio and a classic scope of expiratory volume loop. Ya. Yang gambar 3 ini Yang C reduce PEFR, CD itu period of high flow, C itu curvilinear shape. Okay. Scoop out respiratory flow volume loop. Spirometry is the only pulmonary function test needed to make the diagnosis of obstructive lung disease, and FEV1 per FVC ratio of less than the fifth percentile of predicted is the diagnostic criterion of the American Thoracic Society (ATS). After a diagnosis of airway obstruction has been made, the severity of obstruction is usually determined by the percent predicted of the FEV1, as shown as table 3.3. Spirometry is suggestive of restrictive lung disease when both FVC and FEV are decreased, but the FEV and FVC ratio is normal. However, measured lung volume, a distinct test, must demonstrate a decreased total lung capacity to make the diagnosis. Spirometry can also be ordered with and without use of inhaled bronchodilator to determine the amount of reversible airway obstruction. Reversible airway obstruction is defined greater than the 12 to 15% of improvement in FEV1 or FVC after treatment with an inhaled bronchodilator. The identification of patients with reversible airway obstruction can be important component preoperative pulmonary obstruction, with a view to decreasing airway obstruction and minimizing cervical morbidity. Although spirometry is the most common of all pulmonary function tests, more extensive testing of lung volume or gas sensor is often needed. Since spirometry measures only the volume of air exhaled, vital capacity (VC), or it is unable to measure the residual volume (RV) or total lung capacity. RV is the air left in the lung after complete exhalation, ya. Nanti kita ke figure 35 ya. D3 RV is the RV is the air left in the lung after complete exhalation. TLC, total lung capacity, equals residual volume plus vital capacity. Vital capacity. Then several different techniques can be used to determine the TLC and RV. The three most common techniques to measure lung volume include inert gas dilution, nitrogen washout, and body plethysmography. A detailed discussion of each of these techniques is beyond of the scope of this chapter. However, it is important to recognize that neither the inert gas technique nor the nitrogen washout technique measure the volume from poorly ventilated areas of the lung. Therefore, but this technique can underestimate in TLC patients with obstructive lung disease and air trapping. It is patient with emphysema. Plethysmography will give an accurate measurement of lung volume in this patient. As mentioned above, lung volume are required to make the diagnosis of restrictive lung disease, which is defined by total lung capacity of less than 80% predicted and can result from a wide variety of causes, including pulmonary fibrosis, chest wall disorder, obesity, or neuromuscular disease. After confirming the presence of restriction, the vital capacity is commonly used to quantify the severity of restriction, as shown in table 3. Ini ya, figure 3.5 ya. Graphic representation of spirometry relationship. Jadi vital capacity, ya, ERV, respiratory reserve volume ya, FRC, function residual capacity, itu inspiratory capacity ya. RV residual volume, TLC total lung capacity, jadi vital capacity sama ditambah residual volume ya. Dan TV ada volume, pasang biasa, sama visi vital capacity ya. For patient with an airway obstruction, the total lung capacity is usually normal or increased. Lung volume are important for patients with an airway obstruction and decrease FVC to look for the presence of air trapping or coexistent restrictive lung disease. Air trapping is the inability to empty areas of the lung and consequent hyperinflation. Lung volume in this setting demonstrate an elevated RV greater than 130% predicted, and often an elevated TLC. A decreased TLC, total lung capacity, is the presence of airway obstruction, indicates combination of obstructive and restrictive disease. The obstructive atau restrictive disease. The combination of obstruction and restriction can make the determination of pulmonary function difficult to quantify, but is important to recognize. Lung volume are not indicated in all patients undergo spirometry, but they can be useful in patients with decreased FVC or patients who are suspected of having restrictive lung disease of any cause. Okay. Ya. Tabel 33. Jadi jika FEV1 force expiratory volume greater than 70 predicted is mild obstruction ya. Dan jika less than 35 predicted is very severe. Vital capacity ya. Jika greater than 60% predicted is mild and less than 40% predicted is severe. Jadi pada asma FEV1 dan atau FEV1 dibagi FVC force vital capacity normal atau berkurang. Force vital capacity-nya berkurang tapi residual volume-nya normal atau kan tambah ya. Dan di LCO normal. Pada emphysema force expiratory volume-nya berkurang ya. FVC force vital capacity-nya normal atau berkurang bisa. Dan residual volume-nya bertambah ya, meningkat ya karena ada air trapping. Pada chronic bronchitis, FEV1 dibagi FVC-nya berkurang, FVC force vital capacity-nya berkurang juga, tapi RV residual volume-nya normal ya. Ini mirip-mirip pada asma, pada kronik. Pada interstitial lung disease, FEV1 dibagi FVC-nya normal atau meningkat, bahkan force vital capacity-nya berkurang ya, dan residual volume-nya normal. Pada pulmonary hypertension, baik FEV1 per FVC atau FVC normal dan residualnya volumenya normal. Cuman di LCO yang berkurang ya. Oke. Dan pada neuromuscular disease yang berkurang itu malah FVC, force vital capacity ya. Sisanya normal. The third most common test ordered from the pulmonary function lab is the diffusing capacity. It is measure the transfer of gas from the air to alveolar space to the hemoglobin and red blood cell. Since it's technically difficult to measure the diffusion of oxygen, the pulmonary function lab measure the LCO that closely mimics the transfer of the oxygen and is used to surrogate. Normal the LCO is approximately 20 to 30 milliliter per millimeter Hg. And is influenced by age, sex, and height. Since diffusion of gas is influenced by oxygen carrying capacity of blood, it is important to recognize the presence of anemia, which can significantly lower the measure the LCO. Pathologic condition that can lower the LCO to less than 80% predicted include pulmonary fibrosis, emphysema, pulmonary hypertension, and right to left intracardiac shunt, and anemia. A few rare conditions can elevate the LCO greater than 130% predicted, which include asthma, alveolar hemorrhage, congestive heart failure, and left to right intracardiac shunt. The combination of spirometry and lung volume in the LCO can provide wealth of information about the pathophysiology of lung disease. Table 35 depicts the expected changes seen in different lung disease. Table 35 tadi ya. Oke, tadi bahas. In summary, the measurement of pulmonary function is readily available, minimally invasive, and can provide a large amount of information that can influence the perioperative and intraoperative management of patients with lung disease. It is important to remember that borderline pulmonary function tests should not exclude a patient from surgery if he or she is otherwise a good surgical candidate. Okay. More extensive exercise testing may be useful in patients with borderline pulmonary reserve who are being considered for lung resection. Lanjut ke exercise testing atau CPAT. Exercise testing can be used in variety of clinical settings, including the assessment of patients' suitability for lung resection. In this setting, exercise testing has been advocated for patients at moderate to high surgical risk whose pulmonary function, based on preliminary evaluation, doesn't suggest adequate pulmonary reserve. Specifically, exercise testing may be useful in patients with obstructive lung disease, COPD, and those with post-operative predictive FEV1 less than 1 liter. Tadi ya, 1 liter yang risiko tinggi ya. So, tadi kita lihat sekilas. Yang 1 liter, 1,5 liter sama 2 liter ya. Ya, jadi kalau misalnya kurang 1 liter ya high risk ya. Dan jika lebih dari 2 liter dia ya boleh untuk bahkan pneumotomi. Jika 1,5 liter untuk lobektomi ya, cut off-nya. Oke, ini tadi. It may also be informative by evaluating patients with a combination of obstructive and restrictive lung disease. Exercise testing can take several different forms. Simple tests such as 6-minute walks or stair climb tests have been evaluated in small series of patients undergoing tracheotomy for lung cancer and have been shown to predict operative morbidity and mortality. During the 6-minute walk test, the subject walks on the level ground at a breeze of pace 6 minutes and the pace 6 yeah. And the distance cover is measured in feet. A stair climb test measures the number of steps an individual can climb at normal pace. Udah kerekam videonya, oke kita lanjut lagi ya. Oke deh. Kita lanjut lagi tadi mana ya? Oke, di sini tadi ya. Exercise testing can take several different forms. Simple tests such as 6-minute walk or stair climb tests have been evaluated in small series of patients undergoing tracheotomy for lung cancer and have been shown to predict operative morbidity and mortality. During the 6-minute walk test, the subject walks on level ground at a brisk pace of 6 minutes, and the distance covered in measured feet. A stair climb test measures the number of steps an individual can climb at normal pace. One small studies showed that 6-minute walk distance of less than 1,000 feet was predicted complication within 19 days, with a positive predicted value of 18% and negative predicted value of 100%. A stair climb test result of less than 44 steps was also useful, with positive predicted value of 91% and negative predicted value of 18%. The shuttle walk test has recently been validated to linearly correlate with VO2 max with a shuttle distance of to 250 meters, being equivalent to VO2 max of 15 milliliter per kg per minute. For center where formal CPAT facilities are not easily accessible, this simple test may be useful in careful selected patients. Lanjut. For medical centers, more extensive testing can be performed at CPAT, which offer the opportunity can be performed with CPAT. Offer opportunity to measure the cellular, respiratory, and cardiovascular response to exercise. CPAT is underused because a common lack of understanding of the test and the interpretation of the clinical information that it provides. There are a wide range of clinical situations in the CPAT can be helpful. These include assessment of unexplained dyspnea or fatigue, disability evaluation, monitoring of response to treatment or rehabilitation programs, transplant evaluation, and pre-operative risk assessment. To perform the test, subject exercise and on stationary bike or treadmill, which calculates the work performed while exercising. The individual is connected to continuous electrocardiogram to the monitor for arrhythmia or sign of myocardial ischemic. In addition, gas exchange is measured to including oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide production. Also, spirometry and ABG measurement can be obtained before, during, and after exercise. A complete discussion of the interpretation of CPAT is beyond scope of this chapter and has been recently reviewed elsewhere. Lanjut lagi. Some of the more useful physiologic measurements provide the CPAT are discussed briefly below. The most basic measurement is include respond to guided exercise in the terms of blood pressure, heart rate, and respiratory rate. The frequent monitoring of vital signs can provide important information regarding cardiovascular response to stress. Blood pressure and heart rate are measured every several minutes or continuously via an arterial catheter. Normal individuals should be able to exercise to heart rate of greater than 80% of predicted maximal heart rate. In an individual who is unable to reach 80% of maximum heart rate without reaching other limits, physical deconditioning may be the cause of dyspnea. The normal blood pressure response to exercise is a moderate increase. Large increase or inappropriate decrease in blood pressure with graded exercise can help to identify of cardiovascular pathology. Spirometry can also be performed as part of CPAT. It is often performed before and after CPAT. Uh, Decrease in FEV1 and FEV1 per FVC can identify exercise-induced bronchospasm as cause of dyspnea. Most of data provided by CPAT are obtained from the measurement of exhaled gas. These measurements are interpreted in the context of the work being performed on the stationary bike or treadmill, which is recorded as well. One of the more useful measurements provided by CPAT is the maximal oxygen uptake during graded exercise (VO2 max). Oxygen consumption is determined by the cardiac output, arterial oxygen content, and extraction of oxygen by the tissue. In, inter- in interpreting CPAT, VO2 is one of the first results to look at because it indicates whether the patient physiologic response allow him or her to reach maximal aerobic function. A subject who is unable to reach 80% of VO2 max with exercise is considered to have exercise limitation. If if the aerobic function is limited, reflected in VO2 max less than 80% predicted. Other measurements can be used to determine the cause of limitation. As stated earlier, VO2 max is also most studied for predicting surgical risk, especially for patients undergoing lung resection surgery. For patients who are identified as having exercise limitation, CPAT can be helpful in determining the etiology. Except for highly trained athletes, normal individuals are cardiac limited in response to exercise. This limitation is indicated when the heart rate reaches above 80% of the predicted maximum. Most normal subjects have ventilatory reserve of approximately 10 liters per minute or 10 to 30% of ventilatory capacity. The maximum ventilatory capacity is predicted by using the maximum voluntary ventilation (MVV) that determined by spirometry. The percent of ventilatory capacity reached with exercise is calculated by dividing VE by the MVV. An individual has reached his or her ventilatory limit when VE dividing MVV is greater than 80%. In addition to ventilatory limits, the respiratory system can be limiting because of the problems with gas exchange or V dividing key mismatch. Several different measurements can be used to identify problems with gas exchange. The arterial PO2 normally increase with exercise, owing the improving VQ matching and increasing VE. Abnormal response to exercise, including decrease of arterial PO2 and increase in the AA gradient, alveolar arterial gradient. The arterial PCO normally decrease with exercise owing the increased VE, and increase the PCO2 with increasing VE seen with exercise, indicating of an abnormal increasing in the dead space or tidal volume ratio. Abnormalities in gas exchange can be due to pathologies with the lung, parenchymal, or pulmonary vascular disease. Another value that is frequently reported is the anaerobic threshold (AT). Anaerobic threshold is the VO2 during exercise where aerobic metabolism is supplemented with anaerobic metabolism. The level of the level is reflected by an increase in the lactic acid within the blood. Several different methods can be used to identify the aerobic uh, the ATT threshold, aerobic threshold for patient with arterial catheter. For patient with arterial catheter, frequent blood sampling can be performed to measure blood platelet levels. More commonly, the AT extrapolated from the measure of exhaled gas. The switching from aerobic to anaerobic metabolism leads to a cascade physiologic event. Increasing blood lactate leads to decrease in arterial pH consumption bicarbonate and subsequent increase in CO2 production. There is reflected in nonlinear increase in VO2 once the subject passes the AT. The acidosis also causes an increased ventilatory drive and increased VE. A graph of VCO and VE can be used to extrapolate the AT. The AT can be used to estimate the amount of exercise or work that individual can perform for a sustained time period. Finally, another useful measurement provided by CPET is oxygen pulse, which calculated by dividing the VO2 by the HR heart rate. This is also equal to stroke volume multiplied by arterial and mixed venous oxygen content difference. With exercise, the oxygen pulse normally increase, mainly owing to increasing oxygen excretion by the muscle and increasing CO2. The O2 pulse decrease and reach its maximum at low level of work in several settings, including CHF, anemia, arterial hypoxia, or elevated carboxyhemoglobin level. There are just few physiologic measurements provided by CPAT. When used in correct setting and interpreted by knowledgeable physician, they can be extremely useful in a number of clinical settings. Oke, kita lanjut. The role of bronchoscopy in thoracic surgery. Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States and will account approximately 157,000 deaths in 2010, or the colon, breast, and prostate cancer combined. This estimate that uh, approximately two 200,000 of new cases of lung cancer will be diagnosed in 2010, and the incidence on number of lung cancer that continues to increase amongst women in the United States. This estimate over 19% of all lung cancer deaths in the United States each year are directly caused by tobacco abuse. Bronchoscopy provides a minimally invasive approach for the diagnosis of mediastinal and hilar adenopathy tumor and the central airway and solitary parenchymal lesion. Advances in navigation such as electromagnetic and virtual bronchoscopy navigation, to be discussed later, have significantly improved the yield of for peripheral tumors. Given the minimally invasive nature of the procedure, bronchoscopy is also invaluable tools to the surgeon and pulmonologist for both the diagnosis and the management of airway tumor and disorder. Next. Staging system for lung cancer. The initial workup and diagnostic testing for lung cancer is focused on appropriate staging of the disease. Prognostic data, including response to treatment and survival, as well as guidance for treatment management, have all been closely linked with appropriate staging of the disease. Lung cancer staging and pathology is divided into two main diagnosis groups: non-small cell lung cancer and small cell lung cancer. NSCLC and SCLC. The staging of NSCLC is defined by the TNM system. The tumor characteristic focus on tumor size and presence of the extent tumor invasion into surrounding structure. Lymph node involvement is defined as the presence of absence of metastasis to regional lymph nodes. Jadi ada lymph node involvement and in defined anatomic location and the distant metastasis criteria M is simply the presence or absence of distant metastatic disease or malignant pleural disease. Ada metastasis jauh ya. The TNM staging system is used to determine the clinical diagnostic stage, surgical pathology stage, and retreatment stage, and autopsy stage as defined above. The classic staging of SCLC is two-stage system defined by limited or extensive stage disease. Limited disease is a defined disease burden it is within a single radiation therapy portal window found within the ipsilateral hemithorax. Extensive disease is defined by tumor burden beyond the ipsilateral hemithorax. Limited disease, single single radiation therapy portal, ipsilateral hemithorax. Kalau ekstensif, ya kalau menyeberang ke ipsilateral hemithorax. Staging implication on treatment and survival in NSCLC, non-small ya. Using TNM data, patient group can be further classified into TNM subset group. Each main group in this classification schema has similar treatment and modalities and survival data. Unfortunately, the overall result of treatment response in an SCLC patient remain poor, except for localized disease. Surgical resection of the patient with stage 1 to 2B portends better prognosis and highest chance of potential cure. Radiation therapy has curative intent in a minority of NSCLC patients and is most used in conjunction with the chemotherapy and/or palliation. Chemotherapy has multiple roles in the treatment of NSCLC, from neoadjuvant chemotherapy and radiation prior to surgery, adjuvant therapy after resection to palliation. The 5-year the 5-year survival in patients with NSCLC correlates well with the clinical and pathological stage. Patients with stage 1A disease have a median survival of 58 months, whereas patients diagnosed with stage 4 disease have median survival only 6 months, 58 bulan atau 4 tahun ya. The clear relationship between staging and response to treatment and survival has made proper diagnosis, testing, and sampling crucial in the diagnosis and treatment of lung cancer. Clinical and or non-invasive staging can markedly differ from pathologic staging. It has been shown that up to 24% of patients are clinically overstaged and 20% are understaged when compared with pathologic data. As a result of this type of disparity with their obvious repercussions, the major US and European societies have published guidelines suggest that all patients should have appropriate pathologic staging prior to undergoing cancer resection with curative intent. Invasive staging for NSCLC. Based on TNM staging system, patient is whom distant metastatic disease has been investigated and found to be absent. The status of nodal metastasis within the mediastinum is the next level of investigation that is needed to accurately stage the patient. To accomplish this, there are several invasive procedures available to the clinician. The primary goal of each procedure is to obtain adequate tissue from the within mediastinal lymph node to accurately perform pathologic staging. Regional lymph nodes within the mediastinum are classified by the nodal TNM system. Station 1 nodes are high mediastinal nodes are found lying above horizontal line. Stage 1. Horizontal line at the upper rim of brachiocephalic left innominate vein where it ascends to the left, crossing in the front of trachea and its midline. Station 2 nodes or the upper paratracheal nodes are located lying above the horizontal line drawn tangential to the upper margin of the aortic arch and below the inferior boundaries of station 1 nodes. The station 3 nodes or prevascular and retrotracheal nodes may be designed 3A anterior and 3B posterior. Station 4 nodes or the lower paratracheal nodes on the right lie to the right of the midline of the trachea between horizontal line draw tangential to the upper margin of aortic arch and line extending across the right main bronchus and the upper main margin of the upper lobe bronchus and contained with the mediastinal pleural envelope. The lower paratracheal nodes on the left include nodes to the left of the left atrial border of the trachea medial to ligamentum arteriosum. Station 5 nodes subaortic or aortopulmonary window nodes are lateral to ligamentum arteriosum or the aorta or left pulmonary artery and proximal to the first branch of the left pulmonary artery, and lie within the mediastinal pleural envelope. Section 6 nodes are lying anterior and lateral to the ascending aorta and the aortic arch or the innominate artery, beneath a line tangential to the upper margin of the aortic arch. Station 7 is found caudal to the carina of the trachea, but not associated with the lower lobe bronchi or arteries within the lung. Section 8 nodes lie adjacent the wall of esophagus, the right or left of the midline, excluding subcarinal nodes. And last, section 9 nodes are located within the pulmonary ligament, including those the posterior wall and lower part of the inferior pulmonary vein. Dari yang dijelasin tadi ya. Jadi yang paling atas stasiun 1, yang 2 ada stasiun 2, terus ada stasiun 3, 4, habis itu nih langsung 7, 8, dan 9. 9 itu paling bawah ya. Ya, figure figure 3.6 lymph node map. Lymph node zones are supraclavicular green, upper mediastinal blue, orthopulmonary gray, subcarinal yellow, lower mediastinal orange, hilar or interlobar pink, and peripheral aqua. Oke, lanjut. N1 nodes are defined peribronchial or intrapulmonary or filar nodes located in the ipsilateral side of primary tumor. N2 nodes are located ipsilateral to the ipsilateral ya, primary tumor within the mediastinal and subcarinal region. Entry nodes are found within the contralateral, hilar or mediastinal and ipsilateral or contralateral scalene or supraclavicular region. Mediastinoscopy is currently considered the gold standard for mediastinal staging. Jadi mediastinoscopy guys ya. The procedure allows access to lymph node located in the nodal station 2, 4, and the anterior component of station 7. The sensitivity of mediastinoscopy ranges between 78 and 98% of with specificity of 100%. Despite direct visualization of lymphatic tissue and resection, there is still 9 to 11% false negative rate. The limits of the procedure are the routine lymph node sampling during mediastinoscopy doesn't allow access to section 5, 6, and posterior 5, 6, posterior 7, 8, 8, and 9. 5, 6, 7, 8. Karena posisinya di antara aortic arch sama pulmonary ya, left pulmonary artery. An anterior mediastinoscopy Chamberlain procedure can allow sampling of nodal session 5 and 6. Although mediastinoscopy is generally same-day procedure, is performed in under general anesthesia. Has a mortality of 0.2% with a morbidity reported up to 2.5% and has considerable cost. It is surgical procedure performed on a subset of patients who may deem non-operable for eventual surgical resection. Despite current recommendation, mediastinoscopy is performed only in 27% of patients undergoing lung cancer surgery. Successful sampling of nodal tissue is variable, and nodal tissue is obtained less than 50% of the time. Bronchoscopy provides a minimally invasive approach for the diagnosis of tumor in the central airways. The bronchoscopy evaluation of a patient with suspected malignancy is guided by clinical symptoms as well as radiographic finding. Depending upon the history and chest computed tomography, CT or PET-CT finding, bronchoscopy may be diagnostic modality of choice, as it can both make the diagnosis and stage the patient at the same setting. If appropriate staging to be performed, biopsy of the lesion that will place the patient in the highest stage should occur prior to other biopsy. For example, if patient present with left lower lobe mass enlarged subcarinal, section 7 itu ya, subcarinal zone-nya, yellow. Okay. And right paratracheal, section 4 are lymph node. The appropriate procedure would be bronchoscopy with sampling of the 4R node, as this would stage the patient with entry disease, making the patient unresectable. Initial biopsy, if the mouse could contaminate the working channel and make the sample false positive, precluding patient from potentially curative surgery. Endobronchial ultrasound, guided transbronchial needle aspiration. Oke, di endobronchial ultrasound, semacam FNAB tapi pada transbronchial bisa. Transbronchial needle aspiration (TBNA), needle aspiration biopsy, is biopsy technique used during bronchoscopy. It involves placing a catheter containing needle through tracheal or bronchial wall into lymph nodes or masses to obtain sample for cytopathology assessment. The procedure is performed in outpatient setting with moderate sedation. TBNA has been shown to be an effective means of both diagnosing and staging lung cancer. Unlike mediastinoscopy, nodal station 2, 3, 4, 7, and 10, and 11 are generally accessible with the TBNA. 2, 3, 4, 7, 10. Posisinya ya 2 masih di atas, 2, 3 juga masih di atas, 7, 10. Masih di area tengah, dan 7 ya di bawah undercarina, dan 10 ya di bronchus. Oh, recent advances in TBNA have integrated ultrasound technology with bronchoscopy, allowing direct visualization of mediastinal structure that has greatly improved the yield. In 2005, the convex probe endobronchial ultrasound (EBUS) bronchoscopy was first introduced in Japan. Bronchoscope has an ultrasound transducer at the tip as well as video processor to allow for both a live ultrasound and optical image. This newer technology provides a distinct advantage by allowing for real-time visualization of the targeted lymph node through their wall with ultrasound technology. Real-time imaging of the needle sampling of the target lymph node white arrow can then be achieved through the working channel of bronchoscope with a dedicated needle system. Additionally, medicinal vessels can also be visualized blue arrow, decreasing the incidence of inadvertent puncture. Although convex EBU system has only been available since 2005, it has made a significant impact of the practice and yield of diagnostic testing for medicinal staging of lung cancer. In the recent study of 572 lymph nodes in 500 patients, EBU's TBNA was shown to have diagnosis yield of 94%. Because of the success of and impact of EBU's TBNA on lung cancer staging, data are now emerging nearly comparating gold standard of mediastinoscopy to EBU's TBNA for medicinal staging. A recent prospective crossover trial cervical lymph node dissection compared biopsy result of paratracheal and subcarinal lymph node in patients undergoing EBUS TBNA and then mediastinoscopy. In the 66 patients studied, the prevalence of malignancy was 89%. Prevalence malignancy ya. EBUS had a higher overall diagnosis yield, 91% compared to mediastinoscopy. 78%. In the per lymph node analysis, the PER lymph node analysis, the sensitivity, specificity, and negative predictive value of ABUS were 87, 178%. Oh, specificity 100%. Ya. Okay. Respectively, the sensitivity, specificity, and negative predictive value of mediastinoscopy 80, 68, 159%. No significant differences were found between EBUS and mediastinoscopy in determining true pathologic end stage. Itu ya, EBUS ultrasound. Although data are favorable, it is important to recognize the limitation of the needle expression that non-diagnostic tests with EBUS TBNA should be considered. Atau bisa menggunakan video assisted thoracic surgery (VATS). EBUS for restaging the mechanism. Recent data, the oncology literature have suggested that there may be a role cervical resection in NSCLC patients who are initially stage 3A and 2 and have a favorable response to induction chemotherapy or chemoradiotherapy, neoadjuvant therapy. This patient or chemoradiotherapy, this patient may be successful downstage, allowing the resection with the curative intent. Accurate restaging for the patient after induction therapy can be challenging. Previously, the standard care was to attempt restaging with mediastinoscopy. Unfortunately, performing a repeat mediastinoscopy, especially after radiation therapy, can be technically difficult due to scar tissue formation, adhesion, and bleeding. It has also been shown that due to these technical challenges, the yield of diagnostic tissue sampling during repeat mediastinoscopy decreases. As a result of the technical challenges associated with repeat mediastinoscopy, some experts currently recommend EBUS TBNA for initial staging and mediastinoscopy for restaging of the mediastinoscopy. Jadi EBUS TBNA. With the understanding, the sensitivity, specificity, and overall accuracy seems to be less for restaging when compared on the data on initial staging. EBUS and EUS TBNA, full endoscopic staging. Both EBUS and EUS esophageal ultrasound allow for successful sampling mediastinal lymph node, but each have certain limitations. EUS fine needle expression (FNA) performed with a specialized gastroscope through the GI tract, allow for access station 4R, 4L, and 5 potentially. 7, 8, and 9. In addition, EUS allows access to the left adrenal gland, which could therefore evaluate for stage 4 disease. By using EBUS TBNA and EUS FNA during the same procedure, studies have been shown combined approach yielding a sensitivity 93% and negativity predictive value of 97%. In this study, combined modalities also yield better result than either procedure alone. Okay, of course. Bronchoscopy sampling of parenchymal abnormalities. EBUS can also be used to help improve accuracy of sampling peripheral nodules. The earliest EBUS system used a radial probe with a 20 mHz transducer that could be inserted via 2.8 mm working channel. Despite not allowing for real-time guidance, the early studies with radial probe EBUS found significantly improved in the yield of sampling of the peripheral nodes. The sonographic characteristics of peripheral nodes have also been shown to correlate well with histology. There are several available tools by which to obtain specimen during bronchoscopy, including forceps biopsy, brushing, bronchial wash atau lavage, and TBNA. To perform a bronchoalveolar lavage, the bronchoscope with wedge in the target segmental or subsegmental bronchus leading to the lesion. Only coats of normal saline are instilled and then aspirated. BAL is thought to sample of approximately 1 million of value, and the cellular and non-cellular contents of the lavage fluid have been shown to closely correlate with inflammatory nature of the entire lower respiratory tract. The use of multiple sampling modalities has been shown to improve the yield as compared to with using only one method to sample parenchymal nodule or mass. Yeah. Enhanced navigation. The use of electromagnetic navigation, especially when used in conjunction with radial probe AWS, is a novel technology. It is that has been shown to allow accurate sampling of peripheral solitary pulmonary nodule below 2 cm in diameter. In a virtual bronchoscopy is generated from the patient CT scan. The patient lies in electromagnetic field and steerable guide is placed through the extended working channel. Bronchoscopic registration is then performed, which in essence fuses the CT scan with the patient anatomy. Navigation to the target then occurs by looking at the CT in the axial, sagittal, and coronal planes. Once found, the guide is removed, and standard bronchoscopic tools such as TBNA needles, forceps, and braces are placed through the extended working channel. Rigid bronchoscopy and advanced bronchoscopy technique. Although many advanced techniques can be performed with flexible bronchoscopy, rigid bronchoscopy remains the tool of choice for therapeutic intervention. The rigid bronchoscope provides an airway in which to oxygenate or ventilate the patient as well as pass multiple devices, including large bore suction catheter or laser or argon plasma coagulation (APC), electrocautery fibers, and the microdebrider bed. The larger biopsy instrument, the rigid bronchoscopy itself, can be used to achieve relative lung isolation, delayed stenosis, and core out tumor from the central airway. Argon plasma coagulation (APC) is non-contrast method using argon gas plasma to achieve tissue coagulation and hemostasis. As the plasma is directly closest crowded sources, APC has the ability to treat lesion lateral to the probe. Okay. The depth of penetration for APC is approximately 2 to 3 mm. Hence, the risk of airway perforation is less when compared with laser. Yeah. Lanjut laser terapi. Uh, Di Nd:YAG, neodymium, yttrium, aluminum garnet laser remain the most widely used laser in the lower respiratory system and has been used for both benign and malignant disease. In addition, newer laser and the CO2 laser with a flexible catheter have been introduced and are available. The primary advantage of laser photoresection is that it provides rapid destruction or vaporites of the tissue. Care must be taken, however, as the depth of penetration can approach 10 mm and airway perforation with resultant pneumothorax, pneumomediastinum, and vascular injury has been reported. Despite this, the safety record of laser bronchoscopy is excellent, with overall complication rate less than 1%. Laser lesions almost amenable to laser therapy are central, intrinsic, and short, below 4 cm, with a visible distal and the broken lumen. When lesions meet this criteria, patency can be re-established more than 90% of the cases. And electrocautery. Electrocautery has alternating current at high frequency to generate heat, which cuts, phosphorize, and coagulates tissue depending on the power. Electrocautery is a contact method of the tissue destruction, and variety of cautery probe are available, including blunt tip probes, knives, and snare. The snare is an ideal tool for pedunculated lesion as the stall can be cut and coagulated with while preserving the majority of the tissue for pathologic interpretation. The knife is also an excellent tool for producing radial incision prior to deletion of web-like tracheal stenosis. As with laser therapy, the risk of electrocutter include airway perforation, airway fires, and damage to the bronchoscope. Oke, lanjut microdebrider. Mechanical debridement of the bronchial tumor and granulated tissue can be accomplished with various modalities. Microdebrider are power instruments that consist of a hollow shaft with a rapidly rotating blade and suction. The device has been used for many years by the otolaryngology community for sinus surgery and other modalities. More recent, the procedure has been used as an alternative or in conjunction with other modalities such as laser excision and or electrocautery. Airway debulking with the microdebrider is accomplished by shaving and suction the tissue under direct fluoroscopic guidance through the rigid of bronchoscope. The microdebrider requires a rigid bronchoscope or laryngoscope due to its rigid structure. It is not amenable to flexible bronchoscopic technique. Although the technology appears promising and useful modality in the management of central airway obstruction, further studies are required to assess long-term outcome of the microdebrider compared with more conventional therapy. Next, airway stent. Montgomery is credited as initiating the widespread use of airway stent after his development of silicone T-tube in 80 in 1980 and 1965 for use in patients with tracheal stenosis. Dumont, however, introduced the first completely endoluminal air way stent in 1990. Airway stents are the only technology that can alleviate extrinsic airway compression. They are commonly used in conjunction with other modalities for patients with intrinsic or mixed disease. Over the past 15 years, there there has been an explosion in both stent design and the number of endoscopists who place airway stent. As with any procedure, it is crucial to understand the indication and contradiction of the procedure, as well as be able to anticipate, prevent, and manage the associated complication. Unfortunately, the ideal stent has not yet been developed. This stent would be easy to insert and remove, yet not migrate and or of sufficient strength to support the airway, yet be flexible enough to mimic normal airway physiology and promote secretion clearance, biologically inert to minimize the formation of granulation tissue, and available in variety of size. There are currently two main types of stent: metal and generally made of nitinol and silicone. Although metal stents are easily placed, they can extremely difficult to extract. They are usually covered typically with silicone or polyurethane, and uncover varieties. For malignant airway obstruction, the only appropriate metal stents are covered model with minimalist tumor growth. Some others feel that there is no indication for an undercover metal stent. They often use metallic stent in patients with non-malignant airway obstruction has led to FDA creating a black box warning recommending their use as a modality of last resort in this patient. The main advantage of metal stent is their larger external diameter ratio as compared with silicone stent. Although silicone stents require rigid bronchoscopy for replacement, they are more easily removed and are significantly less expensive. Complication during bronchoscopy. Bronchoscopy is generally considered a relatively safe procedure. That being said, it is common that patients in whom bronchoscopy is perform and can have multiple comorbidities, and bronchoscopist needs to be aware of the patient medical history, including medication and allergies. In addition, bronchoscopist needs to have true understanding of the effects and side effects of the medication they will use to achieve adequate topical anesthesia and moderate sedation, and be skilled in airway management. Should be should the patient experience should, should the patient experience hypoxemia or hypercapnia. Transient fever is the most common in adverse event following bow, and can be seen up to one-third patient. Major adverse events, including hypoxemia, pneumothorax, bleeding, and death, may also occur, and both patient and procedure-related factors are important determinants. The British Thoracic Society has published its recommendation concerning the performance of diagnostic flexible bronchoscopy and includes steps that should be taken to minimize complications. Summary: cardiothoracic surgery can be associated with high rate of pulmonary complication due to high risk nature of the surgical procedure, and also because most of the patients have underlying lung disease. The preoperative evaluation can risk stratify which patient can safely undergo this potentially life-saving surgical procedure with minimal risk of morbidity and mortality. By understanding both and the preoperative evaluation algorithm and role for bronchoscopy and the preoperative follow-up, the number of patients who are offered surgery safely can be maximized and the complication limited. Okay, nice. Jadi ya intinya tentang fisiologi pernafasan, preoperatif screening pada pasien-pasien, dan modalitasnya, berapa minimal FIV1 atau FVC yang harus diperlukan untuk operasi, baik itu lobektomi, pneumotomi, atau sekedar pengambilan sampel tumor ya di bawah ya. Oke, nice.